Shabbat Shalom. It's so great to see some faces I'm not used to seeing. It's such a wonderful thing for some of you, Robin, to be able to be walking when I have heard the last time that you were not. So it's a joy to see all of you and to see how we continue to evolve even when we don't see each other. So it's wonderful. We'll begin tonight by recognizing how wonderful it is and singing. That's what I get for not looking. Simply by acknowledging that when we come together, it's more than just coming together. There's something sacred about that moment. And in it, we find God. We'll recite the words of Hine Matov.
On page 10 in your prayer book if you need it. Hine Matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. And Shabbat Shalom again to everyone. I hope you also all picked up a little half sheet that has some additional words that we will pray together and sing together. And we will continue with Olam Chesed Yibaneh. And you must build this world from love. And if we build this world from love, then God will build this world from love. Let's ooh, ooh, continue singing together before we light our Shabbat candles. Oh, hear my prayer, I sing to you. Be gracious and bless them with goodness and mercy and peace. O hear my prayer to you. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Oh, hear my prayer I sing to you. Be gracious to the ones I love, and bless them with goodness and mercy and peace. Oh, hear my prayer to you.
I'd like to invite Danielle Zeislop to come forward and help us with lighting our Shabbat candles. You can follow along on page 2.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. We will continue together in our prayer book on page 24 with the words of Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Tzedechem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shemir Rabbi, Ve'alma divrach yutev yamlich malchutei, B'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayed kol beit Yisrael, Bagala, Bagala, u'v'zman kariv, Ve'yimeru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbi mevarach, Le'alam u'lam me'almaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitbahar, V'yitramam, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, V'yithalel, V'yithalal, Shemei Dukudeshah, V'yichu, Le'ela mikol v'chata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Damiran be'al
as we turn to page 28.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed.
We turn to page 30 and we recite in Hebrew if we are able as we meditate on the creation. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim b'chokhmah poteach she'arim uvitbuna mishane itim umachalif et hazmanim umisader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono borei yom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or uma'avir yom umevi layla umavdil bein yom uvein layla Adonai tzevaot shemo el chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. On page 33, as you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. You may be seated. And we continue on page 36. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha v'hayu hadavarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarata b'am v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lektecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha uv'shartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohechem Emet. Standing at the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, and that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh, norat ilot usifele, norat ilot amar kivada Adonai et Yaakov, ugalo miyad chazak mimenu. Baruch ata Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael.
Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace, and raise us up, O guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming, to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
V'shameru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל ביני ובין בני ישראל השבת לדורותם ברית עולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם וביום השביעי שבת בלי נפש ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We turn to page 46 as we rise for the Amidah.
Adonai Yosefata tiftach ufi yagid teilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibur v'Hanorah El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim V'Konei HaKol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imot U'Mevi Geula Livnei Pneihem Le'man Shemo Be'ahava Melech Hoseh U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham V'Zerat Sarah Ata Gibor Le'olam Adonai בחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל החיים בחסד, בחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מלחמוך בעל גבורות, ומירו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. בני אמן אתה לחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
You may be seated. On page 55, disturb us, Adonai, ruffle us from our complacency, make us dissatisfied with the peace of ignorance, the quietude which arises from a shunning of the horror, the defeat, the bitterness, and the poverty, physical and spiritual, of humans. Shock us, Adonai. Deny to us the false Shabbat which gives us the delusions of satisfaction amid a world of war and hatred. Wake us, O God, and shake us from the sweet and sad poignancies rendered by half-forgotten melodies and rubric prayers of yesteryears. Make us know that the border of the sanctuary is not the border of living, and the walls of your temples are not shelters from the winds of truth, justice, and reality. Disturb us, O God, and vex us. Let not your Shabbat be a day of torpor and slumber. Let it be a time to be stirred and spurred to action. Baruch atah Adonai, Mikadesh HaShabbat.
Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu be'amcha Yisrael u'tefilotam be'ava
We continue to pray together on the top of page 59. God of goodness, We give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth, which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulacha na'eh lechodot.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Tahu Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom Ki Atahu Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom V'tol Binecha Levarich et Amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום.
We now take a moment for silent prayer and meditation.
turn to page 244. You may rise spiritually or physically as you're able as we prepare ourselves for Seder Kriyat HaTorah, our Torah service. Please rise.
In kamocha Elohim Adonai ve'in kemasecha malchutcha malchut olamim umemsharcha bechol dor vador Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai imloch leolam vaed Adonai hoz le'amo yitin Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah u'devar Adonai b'Yerushalayim Baruch shenatan Torah Torah Baruch shenatan Torah Torah le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shmo Gadol Adonai iti Umrama Shemo Yachtav Lecha Adonai HaGedula VaGevura VaTiferet VaNitzach VaHod Ki kol bashamayim uvaretz Ki kol bashamayim uvaretz Lecha Adonai HaMamlacha Rabbi na'aseh lechol erosh
You know, I originally thought Rabbi Saba was going to be able to make it tonight, and I had not set the Torah, and I forgot there are no breaks in any of these to help me remember exactly where I'm starting, but I just found it, so we're okay. I know that most of you have probably seen that we're going to be doing some construction. One of the things I'm looking forward to, and probably you are as well, is replacing those lights that are not working so that we can all see the Torah just a little bit better. Now, it is our third week of the month, right? Yes. And time is not a great thing for me. Sometimes I get confused on the days of the week. But today is our third Shabbat, which is an opportunity for us to recognize anyone who is celebrating something in the community, whether it's a birthday or an anniversary. Is there anyone here who would like to come forward for the blessing? Kathy, do you want to join me and we'll do it together? We turn for the blessing to page 250. Baruch hu et Adonai hamavarach, Baruch Adonai hamavarach le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai, Noten HaTorah. Thank you. For those who would like to follow along, you may do so on page 220. I'll be reading where there is a break, a very small one, where it says Vayakom on verse 23. Well, it had a break in there. Just one moment. Got it. Well, I did. There it is. Now I really do have it. Here we go. There are some places in the Torah where there are very many paragraphs in the sense that you can actually see it. But I'm sure some of you are aware that the Torah is one of those few early documents that are justified all the way through it. And sometimes there are very little, if any, markers. So it gets a little confusing. Okay. Vayakom b'layla hu. He got up on that night. Vayikach et shtei neshav, and he took his two wives, that shtei shivchotav, and his two handmaidens, vet achadasar yeladav, and he took his 11 sons, v'ya'avor et me'ever yabok, and he crossed them over the ford at the Jabbok River, v'yikachem v'ya'avirem et hanachal, and he sent them over across the river, v'ya'avor et asher lo, and he sent over that which belonged to him. V'yivater Yaakov levado, and Jacob remained there alone. Vaye'avek ish imo. Remember, the name of the river is the Yabok. You can hear there's a little bit of a similarity. Vaye'avek is the same sound of a root, which means there he fought against a person. Or there, Vaye'avek ish imo. Yes. Ad alot hashachar, until the morning came. So he was wrestling all night. Vayerak hi lo yachol lo, when it became clear that he wasn't going to be able to escape him. Vayiga b'chaf yerecho, that he ended up injuring the place where his thigh was. V'teka chaf yerech Yaakov, and it injured that space on Jacob. V'he'avko imo, and he wrestled with him. Vayomer shalacheni, set me free, ki alo hashachar, for dawn is here. Vayomer lo ashalechecha, I will not let go of you, I will not set you free. Ki im beirachtani, unless you bless me. Vayomer elav, mash mech, he says, mash, what is your name? Vayomer Yaakov, and he says Jacob. Vayomer lo Yaakov, yemer od, you shall no longer be called Jacob. Vayomer od shimcha, ki im Yisrael, for your name shall be Yisrael. Ki sarita im Elohim ve'im anashim ve'tuchal, because you have fought against God and people, and you have prevailed. That's really loud. Vayishal Yaakov, and Jacob asked, Vayomer, Hagidan na shemecha, why don't you tell me your name? Vayomer, and he said, Lama ze tish'al lishmi, why are you asking my name? Vayivarech oto, Sham, and he blessed him there. Vayikra Yaakov Shem Hamakom, and Jacob blessed Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, Ki Ra'iti Elohim Panim El Panim, because there it was that I saw God. Panim El Panim, Peniel means face of God. Saw God face to face. V'tinatzel nafshi, and my soul survived. Please join with me on page 250. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. As we have the Torah in our midst, it offers us an opportunity to think of those in our community who are in need of blessing, of healing. Tonight we think in particular of Ralph Schwartz, Jim Locke, Jeff Froelich, Dick Levinson, Liba Batshane Dolmasha, Matthew Smith, Sean Frost, Mitchell Quint, Gary Pacernick, Marlene Maiman, Cicely Nathan, Diane Schreer, Jim Hagan, Gershon Reuven Ben Esther, Linda Dean Harris, Rivka Bat Avraham Sarah, Rosalind Moss, Pat Bloom, Ronald Epstein, Jerry McDonald, Richard Lieberman, Marty Sacker, Bob and Gert Kahn, and Deborah Seidel. And of course, those we name now in our hearts, or if you'd like to call them forward, you may do so at this time. Yishaberach Avotenu v'imotenu, Yishavarech v'yirapeh et hacholim. You're the one who has blessed and kept our ancestors in every generation. Continue to bring blessing and healing to those in our community. Baruch atah Adonai rofei hacholim. Please rise as we lift and dress the Torah.
Bye.
this week's Torah portion, which is called Vayishlach, we read about the night before the long-awaited reunion between Jacob and his brother Esau. As we just read, Jacob lays down by a stream that's name itself, Ya'avok, means struggle, implying that after coming to terms with his uncle, Jacob is now ready to struggle with conflicts that have long haunted him. Once he falls asleep, Jacob wrestles with an Ish, an adversary. He prevails and is then, as we just heard, given the name Yisrael, Israel, one who struggled with God and man and prevailed. Jacob awakens, transformed and ready to reconcile with his brother. There are numerous theories about who the Ish was that Jacob faced that night. Some commentaries suggest that because he ended up with a physical injury, he must have wrestled with someone, and that someone must have been his brother. Others suggest it could have been Esau's angel, even his own angel, or even God. I personally lean towards the direction of the modern commentaries, who suggest that the Ish with whom Jacob wrestles was in fact himself, his better impulses faced off against his darkest fears. It becomes a story that teaches that strength emanates from within and often begins with personal struggle, perhaps many, followed by years of confrontation. As I mentioned in this week's tidbits, last week in our Torah study, we were looking at one of my favorite interpretations of Jacob's journey. In the book Genesis, The Beginning of Desire, Aviva Gottlieb Zornberg points out that the first time Yaakov encounters an angel in his first dream with the ladder, he stopped Kiva Hashemesh because the sun had set. And when he awoke from his wrestling match that we just read in this week's portion, he rose with Alot HaShachar, the rising of the sun, the dawn. Anchored in Midrash, Zornberg suggests that these markers of time are actual functions of Jacob's personal sense of time. It appears from this connection between the setting and the rising of the sun, it was as if Jacob remained 20 years in one long personal period of darkness, a spiritual darkness, where nothing is clear, everything is shifting, reality is illusory. We are conditioned to see darkness as something that is debilitating or isolating. We see darkness as a cause for fear. We can relate to that idea of being afraid of the dark, that which we cannot see. Yet Zornberg suggests that we are wrong to assume that. Rather, she says, it is the opposite. It is through darkness that we can actually see. If we pause to do that difficult work of self-reflection, we come to understand who we are and what we stand for. The darkness becomes a place for vulnerability, which can be frightening. But it is that same vulnerability that enables us to discover our own truths. And we emerge from that place hopeful, as did Jacob, after his higher self fought and overcame his more earthly and selfish side. It was when he prevailed, standing in the fullness of selfhood, that Jacob recognized he was in God's presence again. I can only speculate, but I imagine that up to that moment, Jacob had not been ready to recognize God, especially because he could hardly recognize himself. It was only after this period for self-discernment that Jacob finally could overcome that it was that he previously had keeping him from coming closer to God, and realizing, as he did, that God was there all along, supporting him through each of those difficult moments. How Jacob wrestled with himself and with his life experiences is something that we can all relate to. The struggle, the wrestling match of confronting perhaps our own pain or complexity may sometimes translate to 20 years of pain and suffering, or perhaps longer. But as we see with Jacob it can open the door for us to mature, and something holy and transformational may come from our efforts. Even though it may be painful, self-reflection and self-understanding is a good thing for spirituality. Being more mindful of who we are and wrestling with what holds us back from our highest selves will also enable us to come closer to God. Like Yaakov, who became Israel, we may also redefine ourselves. We are not limited by our past behaviors, and we can rise above even our worst moments. We are only held back by our own self-deception. It is really hard work, but I believe we are capable of succeeding. And I know that we can find comfort, seeing as we just did, that God remained with Jacob throughout his very complicated life, a life filled with personal and spiritual struggles. And we can hope and believe that God will be with us as well. It is my prayer that each of us moves from strength to strength as we continue to support one another in the journey between. Kehiratzon. Please turn with me to page 256 back in our prayer book as we rise to return the Torah to the ark.
Etz chaim hi, l'machazikim ba, v'tomcheha me'usha d'rachea darchinon, v'chon tivoteh shalom hashivinu Adonai elecha v'nashuva chadish yaminu kedem chadish yaminu kedem.
We turn together for the words of Aleinu on page 282.
Aleinu l'shabbat Adon hakol, latet kidula l'aseh breshit, shelo asani chayei aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam gilgenu lahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol ha'amanam. אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים
When cherished ties are broken and the chain of love is shattered, only trust in the strength of faith can lighten the heaviness of the heart. At times, the pain of separation seems more than we can bear, but if we dwell too long on our loss, we embitter our hearts and harm ourselves and those about us. The psalmist said that in his affliction he learned the law of God, and in truth, grief is a great teacher when it sends us back to serve and bless the living. We learn how to counsel and comfort those who, like ourselves, are bowed with sorrow. We learn when to keep silent in their presence and when a word will assure them of our love and concern. Even when they are gone, the departed are with us, moving us to live as in their highest moments they themselves wish to live. We remember them now. They live in our hearts. They are an abiding blessing. This time, we think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us. We are in a period of shloshim for Sandy Sapphire, Howard Faust, and Misha Soifer. We also are remembering those who died at this season in years past, those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own, observing yahrzeits for Blanche Belinken, Gilbert Belinken Jr., Lily Sternby Booth, William Bremer, Morris Cooper, Sidney Donenfeld, Margaret Emhoff, Marcia Froelich, Louis Gradsky, Robert D. Gradsky, Benjamin Greenblatt, Kate Hampel, Hal Kamen, Roberta Bobby Cantor, Francis Claren, Philip Cohn, Louis Lamfrom, Joseph M. Lessner, Fanny Thal Levy, Jacob Loeb, Milton Marks, Jacob Mayerson, Ruth Mellett, Bess Menikoff, Lester M. Myers, Henry S. Rothenberg, Jack Ruda, Linda W. Ruckman, Rosa F. Sajevitz, Israel Jacob Saul, Joseph Saul, Adele H. Schumann, Rosetta M. Schwartz, Joseph Seaman, Naomi Slavin Schaefer, Patricia Thompson, Charles C. Wasserman, Betty Weinstein, Frank Weprin, Rabbi Louis Witt, and Leo Younghart. And if there are other names to recall at this time, I invite you to please call those forward. I'd like to invite all who are remembering or in mourning to please rise first. And we as a community rise together for page 294, where we recite the ancient words of our tradition that we have in every generation to remember those we love. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, ve'alma divrach chiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitvarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal. Shemei dekudja barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Ta'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min Shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, huya aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories always and only be for a blessing. Amen.
As we conclude our service, you may be seated, and we will conclude with the singing of Adon Olam, which you can find on page 321.
Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Koyitzin Ivra L'Yidnasa V'chevzo Kol Azay Malech Shemo Nichra V'achar לכלות הכל, לבדו ימלוך נורא, והוא היה והוא הווה, והוא יהיה בתפארה, והוא אחד ואין שני, להמשיל לו להכבירה, בלי ראשית בלי תכלית, ולא העוז והמזרע, והוא אלי וחי גואלי, בצור חבלי בצרה, והוא ניסי ומנוס לי, מנת כוזי ביום אכרע, בידו אבקיר רוחי, בית ישן והעירה, ועם רוחי גביעתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא.
Adonai is with me, I shall not fear.
And we will do our Kiddush and Motzi here on the Bima, but after you exit the sanctuary, you will be rewarded with pieces of bread and little cups of wine. Hope you will join the blessing with me. If you need the blessing for the wine, I always forget this page. I think you can find it on page number 5.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzoni nichelanu, zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי באנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat l'chaim.
And our blessing over the bread.
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together, as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avot.
And as Courtney had already said, there is some out in the hallway. Please, we hope that you will help yourselves, and we will see you soon. I know we have one more week before we will see you on Zoom. Just a reminder that, again, there will be some repairs being made in the building. So we hope you'll join us again next week before we go back virtual. It's great to see you.
Shabbat Shalom.